Hello class, this is Tre Germany and I will be presenting IMAPS and DNS. So let's get right into it. Now, the first thing that needs to be known is that it is very similar to IMAP, but that S shows like the security essentially. So it's an extra layer of security and protection essentially. Um, Now IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol, like we said, secure. Similar to like HTTPS, HTTP. And also, it is a communication way for things such as mail servers and mail to communicate, and that's through the TCP IP connection. Um, and of course, the port 143 runs IMAP, and then port 993 runs IM IM IMAPS IMAPS. Now moving on, we have the application that we'll be using. Now this application is called Devcot. Now Devcot is a mail server application used for IMAPS and is not able to apply with the newest versions of Mac, but is more common with Linux. Now it doesn't initially come installed on your system, so the code to install it is sudo apt install devcot-imaps. And then if you would like to configure things, of course, you have /etc/devcot/devcot dot configure, and that's how you'll be able to go and configure things if you would like. Now, one thing I will say is that although it's not supported on the newer versions of Mac, it is supported on some of the older versions. And Devcot also supports things like IMAP, IMAPS, POP3, and POP3S, But of course, we're focusing strictly on IMAP. These are just things that should definitely be noted, of course. Now, with those things being said, let's go ahead and move on to some of the hardenings of IMAPs. Sender policy framework. Now, this allows us to see all the unwanted emails via spam and forge. And this is great because it eliminates all sorts of things. Now, the main thing to note about SPF is that this is done and used through DNS records. And we're going to get into DNS records in a little bit, but that is the way that these emails or unwanted mails and forged mails are actually stopped. So that's like its engine if it was a car. That's the main way of running. Next we have excuse me. Next we have enabling IMAP. Enabling IMAP. Now, the thing about IMAP is, and this is probably first, but it must be enabled. It won't just automatically start working, of course. So as written in the slide, you must edit the configuration file in order to have access to it. This is the only way it can be implemented via Devcot. Now, use the following code below, which makes this happen. So what I did is I just wrote the code down, or the steps in order to make it happen. So these steps are simply sudo nano /etc/devcot/devcot dot config. And then you just type in add protocols equal IMAP. And then that shall enable IMAP so that way you'll be able to start using it. Next we have, let's move on. Next we have IMAP's configuration. Now IMAP's configuration, there are multiple ways to configure SSL, and we'll go over each one. There are 4 ways in particular. Now, you can find the setting for SSL to change things with the following devcot directory. You can do 10-ssl.config or config.d. Now the code, I put the most desirable one in the front, which is SSL equals required, which will go ahead and set everything straight. But you have other options here. SSL equals no, SSL equals yes, and disable plain text underscore auth equals yes. And then lastly, SSL equals yes and disable plain text underscore auth equals no. But like we said, go ahead and stick to SSS equals required. Moving along, DNS. We're going to DNS. All right. Now, DNS vertical is abbreviated for the following: domain name server. Now, DNS allows us to type the synonym for a page instead of typing the numbers. Okay, so for instance, there are a lot of pages where you have www.ksu.com, but there's actually an IP address for it. It could be 192. Blah 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 blah. That's what DNS does. It allows us just to get, like I said, the synonym of it. Now, the port for it is 53 DNS, and this is on UDP and TCP. Now, most of the time, it's going to be on UDP. Also, one must know that DNS is used for not only web servers but like VPNs and email servers and things of that nature. Now there are different types of DNSs. We have non-recursive query, which is a DNS server comes with an answer due to DNS record being located in a local cache. We have a an iterative query, which is when host names don't match another host name. And when host names don't match, another host name comes out that is similar. It matches the best, and the DNS client returns the best solution. And then lastly, you have recursive query, which is the DNS client makes the DNS respond with process asked for, but sends an error if runs into problem reaching the site. Now let's move on. We are going to speak on, of course, IIS-DNS. Now, IIS-DNS is a web hosting application. It's usually working on Windows. So things such as Windows Server 2019, OS, like just Windows services where it's mostly applicable. And it has a simple GUI to make things run smoothly. That's what it's known for, essentially. Now, let's talk about the hardenings. Now, we have DNSSEC. Now, this is abbreviated for DNS Security Extension. This basically adds an extra layer of security with a public key signature, which makes DNS lookup stronger with authentication. Now, with that being said, DNS security recognizes, data integrity and data origin authentication. So this is where that extra layer comes into play, of course. Next, we have DNS socket pool. Now, this was kind of my favorite one. I like this one. It reminded me of a game. Essentially, there's a list of ports that the source can be put on. And what it does is it randomizes it each time. So that way, if you're a hacker, if you say, okay, this time it was on port whatever, you can't think that like it was port 225 or something like that. It's not going to be able to go back to that port each time. It's going to randomize it. So this is kind of cool. Like I said, it reminded me of a game, essentially. So this is a really great method that I definitely would use. And then, things like cake poisoning won't happen and all the great stuff like that. So DNS socket pool is a great hardening feature. Next, we have disable DNS recursion. Now, when we disable DNS recursion, it can either be good or bad, So it takes discernment, but we're going to disable it for our particular situation. Now, DNS recursion usually helps the DNS server by finding the name of ads in websites through communication in other servers. Oh, not as addresses. Thank you. Addresses, excuse me. And this is done when you go to DNS Manager, Properties, Advanced, Server Options, and then boom, disable recursion. So pretty simple. You remember it? Not too hard. Not too hard. So pretty simple way to get there and solve all your situation. Now, or disable DNS recursion. Now let's go to the next slide, which is BIND DNS. Now, Bond Vertical is abbreviated for the following: Berkeley Internet Name Domain. Is used with Linux and Windows, and you must manually install and configure. So, of course, the install is sudo apt install by9, the latest version. But then you have to configure, you want to go to etc/bind, and then you have, and then you have /var cache /bind in directories. Now, this is cool because, you know, it's used to publish DNS information, and that, resolves DNS issues, and then turns domain names into IP addresses. It's also the top DNS server software. So that's definitely a plus. It has, credit behind its name. Now, some features for hardening it is, of course, hiding the banner, the version banner. If I'm a hacker and I know you have version 8 or 9 or 6, and I can look that up, or I'm used to hacking those types of versions, of course I'll know how to get into your system. So simply what we have is /etc/name.config in the directory, and I can change the name to like enter my version or whatever you want to have it, but not the actual version that it's in. So that way hackers won't be able to know how to get into your system. Very great way, putting on a mask, like a ski mask or something, hiding the identity. So very simple way to harden. Great in my opinion. Next you have, let's go, configure Shroot environment. Now the whole point of Shroot is really to lighten the load, lessen the security risk. So let's say, God forbid though, but your server, whatever, was taken advantage of by a hacker. Now what this will do is, it's going to lower the damage that actually happens to it. You see what I'm saying? If somebody did take a hold of your computer. And the beautiful thing about that sandbox environment is it doesn't actually put too much pressure on the actual server. So that's the great thing about the Shroot environment that we have over here. Moving on, we have use access control. Now this is simple. This is just like making sure you give the key to the right person. So this essentially allows you to specify who can and cannot access the, access to name server. And this allows you to make a more secure overview of your website and things of that nature. So in order to do this, there are steps that have to be taken with various conditions. You can still make this happen with allow query, allow notify, allow transfer, black hole. I mean, there are multiple things that you can do, but this is really a great way to a great hardening feature. So yeah. And with that being said, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you very much.